We begin our story today where all good stories do, in the thick jungles of South America. In the early 1800s, exploring and documenting his findings was one of the world's greatest scientists, a man mostly lost to the annals of history, Alexander von Humboldt. Through his revolutionary work recording fauna, air pressure, ocean currents, and many other things, he inspired a lot of great minds such as Charles Darwin, Henry David Thoreau, and even Thomas Jefferson. Although most laymen have long forgotten the name Alexander von Humboldt, in the scientific community, he is loved and revered. He has more species named after him than anybody in history, and today's subject is a perfect example of this. The Humboldt squid, also known as the jumbo squid, or even Diablo Rojo, a creature famed for its aggression towards unknown objects like humans. But before we get into that, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who's afraid of the ocean. Without further ado, allow me to drag you down to the world's largest graveyard. Close your eyes and imagine with me for a second. It's a warm, peaceful night on the ocean along the northern California coast. The moon is reflecting off the calm water, and the ship's lights give a clear view of the tide. The air is crisp, and things are quiet. Just as you think, this night can't get any better, you hear a splash, followed by several more, as another passenger calls you over and points off to the side of the boat. At first glance, you can't quite put your finger on what you're looking at. It's almost alien-like, a large pulsating mass of red and white. As you focus more on the anomaly, you see it's hundreds or even thousands of squid. You and this crew are some of the rare few who would have ever seen these creatures in their natural habitat. The Humboldt squid can grow up to a whopping 8 feet long, 8 tentacles to help them swim, and 2 grabbers that are covered in 1,200 sharp spikes that are often described as like cat teeth, which they use to grip whatever prey they come upon. And with their jet propulsion, not many things can escape these apex predators. The way they hunt is also quite unique. In small groups, these squids will use their tentacles to grab prey. Then they use their jet propulsion to drag their prey down at speeds of up to 25 miles per hour. This causes their prey to pass out from the sudden change in pressure. That is when the squid will dismantle their catch by attaching their grabber to either side of the catch and spinning it as they use their beak as large as a human hand to devour their catch. I imagine it's just like a fleshy corn on the cob. Somehow, that's a pleasant death for the squid's helpless feast, because when large groups get together, they simply swarm large animals and tear them apart in a flurry of grabbers and beaks, devouring them in mere seconds, and the squid themselves are not even safe from one another. They've been observed eating each other, especially when they get in their feeding frenzies. But one of the most interesting things about Diablo Rojo is their ability to change colors on a whim. Using their unique pigment called chromatophores, they can change between red and white, as they use this to communicate with one another. They are also quite famous for being flying squid. Much like flying fish, they can launch themselves out of the water. These squid were first recorded off the coast of California in the 1930s, and it became a bit of a sport to hunt them. But after a few years, they seemed to just disappear. That is until the El Nino incident of 1997. El Nino's weather pattern, caused by a large amount of warm ocean water that accumulates and heats up certain parts of the coast. When this happened, the squid returned, and this time, they were here to stay. These squid have few natural predators, some of which include sperm whales, swordfish, and large sharks. But due to the activity of their most fierce and brutal predators, most of their natural predators have become more scarce. And what is the biggest, most fierce predator these squid face, you may ask? Humans. Because remember, boys and girls, the only thing scarier than an 8-foot-long cannibalistic squid who loves to feast on shark is your fellow man. But these squid are not at all intimidated by humans. They don't think enough to even feel fear. All they worry about is procreating and eating. And boy, do they do both. In one birth cycle, the female can lay up to 70,000 eggs. And luckily for ocean life, most of these never hatch. But what happens if a human does have an encounter with one of these raging red monstrosities? There are few recordings of human interactions with these squids, thank God, but none of them is more famous than the attack on Scott Cassell. Scott Cassell is, with no exaggeration, a legend in the diving community. He started diving at 15 when he became an underwater welder, a job touted for its danger, but that was just the start for Scott. Because in 1985, at the age of 23, he joined the Army and did many things, including becoming a medic, sniper, combat diver, and counter-terrorism combat dive instructor for the Special Forces. After leaving the military, he became a commercial diver for many companies, including but not limited to Animal Planet and the Discovery Channel. Then, in 2006, Scott is believed to be the first person to ever film a giant squid. Architeuthis dux is a 40-foot-long squid species that Scott was able to record. Scott was a man who met danger and knew it well. He fed great whites, filmed said 40-foot-long squid, who is also known for their aggression. He even rode tiger sharks, which are often cited as the most aggressive sharks. But when asked about the most dangerous animal Scott had ever encountered, his answer might surprise you.
The most dangerous being I have encountered, besides a lawyer, is the giant Humboldt squid.
The night was perfect for diving. Conditions were just right, and Scott had found a group of squid he had been documenting. The brilliant flashes of red and white told Scott where they were as he descended deeper to get a good shot of them. This dive started like any other. As Scott descended, he filmed and got some pretty good footage. Then, suddenly, he felt a small tug on his fin. He looked down to see one of the squid pulling at it. With a bit of amusement, he began filming the squid. But just then, another squid slammed into his back, wrapping its tentacle around him, causing his camera to pull extremely hard, dislocating his shoulder. As the camera tumbles and gets lost in the abyss, Scott knew he was in trouble. But before he could even think of what to do, another squid wrapped its spiky tentacles around Scott's neck and sank its 1,200 tooth-like spikes into his flesh, ripping and tearing as the squid's beak grew closer and closer. Crack! The squid bites right on Scott's head, fracturing his skull and exposing it to the frigid seawater. While all of this was happening, the squid on his fin was still dragging him down at such ferocious speeds that one of Scott's eardrums burst. A man who had lived unknowable danger was now in more danger than he could ever imagine. But Scott was not ready to go into that icy abyss that he had dedicated his life to. And with a surge of adrenaline, Scott tried frantically to swat the squid off his head and let him go. One immediately bit him on the wrist, shattering it. With a beak pressure of over 100 pounds, it snapped Scott's wrist in 5 places. Scott let out a scream, but his last-ditch efforts paid off as his struggle made the squids let go. Scott swam back to the boat and had to superglue his skull and neck back together before being taken to the hospital. After Scott's harrowing encounter with the squid, you would think he would never go back into the world's largest graveyard. But Scott is a man of fortitude and motivation. And in 2011, Scott set the record for the longest distance traveled by a diver. And he is currently working on the Undersea Voyager project. This is a cautionary tale, and if you ever see the Humboldt squid with its vibrant red and white flashes, maybe just admire them from a distance. Thank you for watching our video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this with a friend named Scott. The first person to comment the timestamp for the funny sea friend we hid in this video will get their comment pinned to the top. This has been the world's largest graveyard, and remember, stay safe out there, friends.